You can just do a thumbs up too on Zoom. So we're gonna go over kind of what I do in a listing consultation. Obviously, every agent has their own style of doing it. I love the sunshine, yes. Everyone has their own different style of presenting with a client and how we each approach a potential seller. I did prepare a slideshow that I'm gonna screen share you guys with. I just kind of wanted to open it up right now though. How long have you guys been in the business? And you can even just put it in the chat, just so I can.
7 months.
7 months, awesome, exciting. September, okay, 1 month, 2 months, okay, cool. So new in the industry. So, again, I do have a slideshow prepared, but I want to open it up first with any questions that you would like to for me to address first, or I can totally just go like in the order of events that happen with a listing appointment. Yeah, so do you guys have any questions on like how do you speak to the seller in the listing or like what are the objections, any sort of immediate questions where you're like what is a listing appointment, anything like that?
I'm just here to kind of see how you prepare for your listing kind of a little bit and kind of take away, some keys I could add to mine. So
Of course, yeah, totally. Awesome. So with that, I'll share my screen. I swear I know how to do this. Let me just hold this. Okay, cool. Um, okay. Let me know if you guys can see my screen. It should be like the first of my slide. Okay,
Yes,
awesome.
we see your screen.
Cool, perfect. So obviously here's the title, listing consultation. We're going over that. Oh, it not letting me click. Oh, ooh, okay, cool. So introduction and objectives. This is kind of like what I want to just give you guys a rundown of. So we're going to talk about pre-qualifying the seller. I'd love to spend a little bit more time on this because that's really going to help identify seller motivation, appointment preparation, what you need to do before you actually get to the appointment. There's actually a lot of research that I personally like to do. So I come super prepared and super vetted and things that I like to go over with the seller, just giving like an extra push of value. And then just kind of the format of how the whole consultation or the appointment goes when you're actually there. And then just general best practices. And then we'll close it with any sort of ahas. I'm sure you guys heard of ahas and stuff being with Keller Williams. Gary Keller likes to use that term and any sort of questions that we have. And of course, like feel free to interrupt if there's a slide where you have any more questions or you'd like me to speak a little bit more to a certain subject. I'd be more than happy to. Okay, hopefully this next one. Hello. Okay, cool. So pre-qualifying the seller. So I'm sure you guys heard already, like with sales and anything is just ask questions and just shut up. That's kind of what everyone what everyone says, right? And oh, let me just admit Rhiannon. Okay. It's kind of what everyone says. And honestly, that's where you're going to really identify the motivation of a seller. So just asking why they're wanting to sell. There's many reasons why people want to sell. In any economy, in any sort of climate, people are going to want to sell. Then it's also very important to ask about what their timeline is. So, like, say that they want to, like, say that I get a call like right now and they're wanting to sell by June, then that kind of gives me an assessment of like their motivation and like, okay, well, maybe they're wanting to price it higher and things like that. And we'll move a little bit more through the slide and we'll get to that whole price reduction sort of conversation that we're seeing in this market. Um, and then I like to ask how much they own the property. So for my first listing, I'm just gonna get a little bit kind of like personal and like what my experiences was. For my first listing, I had a property that had a tax lien, and that was a question that I really wish I asked before because then when my title company pulled up the PR, the preliminary title report, they showed a tax lien and things like that. So definitely be sure to ask about tax liens, builders liens. The tax lien might be a motivation of why they're selling, and any sort of solar liens and things like that. So that's gonna be the payout amount after they sell the property. It's gonna affect how much they net. And then, again, going into what they're hoping to net from the sale of the property, that really helps because I get a scope of how much money they're wanting and if it's possible as I'm running comps and just kind of so I have a scope of who I'm dealing it with, and like in terms of like what type of personality I'm dealing with as well. If they're looking to net like a a like, I'd probably say like a very large amount than what their home is probably worth. I know I'm gonna have to have a real price reduction conversation with them and also go deep into comps as to why the property is going to sell at this price point versus, not the other way. And then I always like to get them like if it's a client that is kind of like I just met or I get most of my business through door knocking. So a lot of it is not like a client that I know so well. Especially when I first started in the business, I got into door knocking a lot. And so they weren't part of my SOI. If they're part of your SOI, you probably already have them on sort of a drip campaign or something like that. But that's just another way to build rapport as well, and so I kinda just send them, like, a little email, Google Calendar invitation, just letting them know, that the listing appointment is on this date and that it's scheduled. It also kinda keeps them accountable to not have any last minute cancellation, so I've found some success with that. And then preparatory questions, you can ask this in the call, or, I like to do another touch before the listing appointment. Say that the listing appointment is, like, a week out. I like to do another touch and give another call. Again, it's really to build rapport and, get them to talk a little bit more. So some more questions are notable property improvements that could impact the home's value. So especially in Utah, a finished basement is adds a lot of value to a property, or a remodeled kitchen, things like that. And then definitely asking about the mechanical system. So like the plumbing, when is the plumbing update, especially if it's an older home, like built in like late 1900s. I mean, that's a historical home in Utah, right? And then making sure that the electrical is updated, any roof issues, because that's where a potential buyer will come back with what we see in this market is seller's concession. So asking the seller to pay the buyer a certain amount, whether that's to buy down the rate or anything like that, or to help with closing costs. If there is something wrong with the roof or things that do come up in the inspection, that's something I really want to prep the seller with as well, just making sure that all those mechanical and electrical systems are at least updated. I mean, I like to say like at least like a 10-year-old updated mechanical system, I think is fabulous. There hasn't been any sort of flags and inspections in my experience working with sellers and buyers when it comes to those. So that's a very important question to ask. Um, Also, you can find all of this information, year build, square feet, recent taxes paid, and number of bedrooms and bath on the MLS. And also you can find out about HOAs. Do we have any questions so far on where to find like I know when I first got my license, I was like, how the heck do you find any of this? Like, especially I know some of us are a month or 2 months in. Do we know where we can find that? I mean, we can totally ask the seller to build rapport, but no, we're pretty good on that. Any thumbs up or anything? Well, I'll just show you anyway. I'm trying to think of a so let's just use this. This is a property I'm pulling comps for an example. Um, let's go. So you go into the tax data search. I'll just use, actually, you know what? I'll just use my address for privacy purposes. Um, so we go to, do you know you go do the tax data search and then you do the house number and then the street number, and then you kind of like specify the county. I'll try to find my name, or let's just use like some random person's name. How about that? So you click on this, and then what's nice is you can see like total market value. This is kind of just based on the tax assessor. And then this is their tax amount for the year, market value year 2024. And then you'll see that it's a condo unit, things like that. Number of stories, obviously that's a for a condo complex. It says number of bedrooms, bath. You can really get a lot of information from here. Also, sometimes the tax data is really not that accurate. So sometimes I like to just, you can go to previous MLS listings. So just up on this tab, and then you can just click on it. And then you can actually see like prior listings and kind of just like look at those pictures and just see overall fit and finish and things like that. And that's another tool you can use when you're pulling comps. So kind of just going into that, and then I can really find out, okay, what was the square footage that was marketed, and what is the HOA on this? And you can even just contact, oh, it's actually Joel Frost was the buyer's agent for that one. You can contact like the listing agent and kind of do some due diligence as far as that goes. Even just asking about how the transaction was or things like that. But this is just for researching subject property. So if you're like looking at comps, which we'll get into later, we can just kind of talk about how you can do your research with that. Are we clear on how we can find all those items? Yes. I'm gonna assume yes, so we'll move on. So yeah, and then also it's also nice to have a recent appraisal report if the seller does. That just kind of gives you a little bit more accurate for square footage, and also just to see if the appraiser, how the appraiser valued the property at that year. Depends. I mean, the most recent appraisal would be great because that's a great marketing tool you can use. It's like, oh, this home recently appraised for this, and you can kind of say that sort of stuff to potential buyers. Okay, let's move on to the next. Any questions on that? No? Okay, let's move on. So, this is the consultation and appointment preparation. So, I research the property in the neighborhood. That's through the MLS where I like go into the search, and I can totally share my screen with this because I think this is kind of like the meat of the listing appointment is pulling comps. But I'll just kind of give the gist of this. So you reach out to your title company for net sheets. I use Real Advantage Title. They're awesome. Their turnaround for providing net sheets to you to provide to the seller is super fast. It's like within 8 hours in my experience. And so what you do is like once you pull your comps, you kind of just reach out to the escrow officer. I work with Stephanie Ferguson, and I say this is how much, these are the certain sales price scenarios. And then you say how much their mortgage payoff is based on the questions you've asked them, recent property taxes, and any other liens that they need to pay off, like at closing, and any sort of HOA assessments that are needed. And then once you give those figures to them, they'll just generate a PDF of net sheets for you to provide your seller. I personally, and also providing your commission as well, like however, whatever price point you want to value your commission at with that specific seller. That's also something you share to provide a more accurate net to the seller. And then, so yeah, we'll go over the CMA and how I prepare a comparative market analysis for my seller. And then I have a seller's guidebook. Have we been on the KW Home Hub? So you just go on the Keller Williams Home Hub, and what you can find is, let me just see if I can pull up my, let me see if I can pull up my guidebook.
Can I ask a really quick question while you're looking?
Yeah, please, please. Yeah.
On that net sheet, you put your commission, but do you put any kind of commission towards the buyer's agent on it?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So that is included in the commission where I mean it is separated. So it is standard practice to like kind of like tell your seller that this is what's gonna bring more buyers to your property and be more attractive is offering buyer agent commission. So yeah, in the net sheet, you include the seller, listing agent commission and buyer agent commission. So whether
Perfect.
that's
Thank
6%,
you.
5%, yeah. And definitely I isolate that figure or itemize that figure to your escrow officer and say, this is what we negotiated, or this is what I'm trying to negotiate with the seller. Say it's 6%, I'm gonna get 3, and then the seller's gonna offer 3 to the buyer. Yeah, so long-winded answer for a question, but yeah, hopefully that answers
So
it.
it's kind of like a worst case scenario, just in case you're able to negotiate even better.
Yeah, what do you mean by worst case scenario?
Like at the max, this is what we're going to offer the buyer's agent, but who knows? Maybe the negotiation takes that off the table. If who knows what kind of buyer you get, right?
Right, yeah, exactly, exactly. So that's just something like my net sheets are super conservative and I let the sellers know that too. They're super conservative and they're super rough because they're estimates. And this is just kind of what we're seeing buyers agents submit in offers. It's just kind of based on where what we're seeing currently in the market with other offers. And so that's typically what I put is just it could be 3%, it could be 1% for the to the buyer's agent, but again, I like to err on the side of being conservative.
Perfect. Me
Does that
too.
help? Yeah, really good question. So this is kind of like a little marketing guide that I prepare for my seller. Can you guys see my face?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I have this hard copy. What I loved about this has just been a work in progress over the years. Like I've had so many different drafts, but basically this is a whole like little marketing guidebook that I print out and I leave with the seller. And what I love about it is it has like pocket folders. I'm like geeking out over this. It has pocket folders and then this just like a little bit about me and then there's like a pocket folder on the back as well. Just wanted to show you a hard copy to see kind of like it's just a simple stapled booklet. Cost me I think like 25-30 bucks to generate. I can also share my contacts for that. They do a really awesome job. It's Swift Printing in Lehigh. Yeah, they do a fabulous job with that. But can you guys see my screen now for the booklet? Like, can you see
Yeah,
it? Okay, okay,
yeah.
cool. I'm just not sure. Like my monitor versus my computer. So this is kind of like the title. I'll just do a really rough rundown of it, but this is kind of a little bit about me and just a little roadmap for sellers, just so they understand like the order of events. And then this is basically off of Home Hub, honestly, and then I just kind of tailor it to how I want it. Like I use my own photos for some of these pages. And do you guys know how to get onto Home Hub? Have you guys been like prepped for that?
Yeah, we have.
Okay, awesome. So with this, you can kind of just like customize it yourself. I kind of added my own pages, add your own flair to it. And this is something I really honest and then I have my client testimonials. Honestly, I really don't take that much time going over this guidebook with them because again it's kind of going back to asking questions especially over the phone. If you can get a pulse on like what they're really wanting, like if the main thing they care about is netting as much money as possible, I'm probably not going to dive too much into this and waste their time. If all they care about is how much am I going to net, I'm just going to jump right into the net sheets that I would put in like the first folder. So really it's tailoring it to what's most important to the client. So, And then obviously practicing key talking points for me. Obviously I get to learn the client from these prepping questions and pre-qualifying client and things like that. And I speak to myself in the mirror and I practice like the way I look and the way I am delivering certain aspects of information. So like say that they're really wanting to net a certain amount of the property, but based on comps, it's just not possible. I kind of just run this sort of, I don't like using the word scripts because I don't really go off of scripts. I just kind of go off my intuition and the flow of the conversation. But I do kind of have my talking points that I do practice where it's like, well, like say that the comps are at, I mean, this is kind of a dramatic example, but it's happened before. They say that the comps are at 500 and they're wanting 700,000 for the home. I would kind of just go over like that reiteration and almost like really emphasizing like, well, this one was listed at 700,000 and it's been on the market for 200 days and they actually expire and they had to put it back on. And here is all this history. So those sort of key talking points, again, like really researching the neighborhood and really almost like being super in tune with the history, honestly, a year back for me, like, has been really helpful to, give the seller a nice, like, scope of obviously credibility and what their market is looking like and what they're competing against. Do we have any questions on that? Okay, let's move on. Well, actually, do we wanna talk kinda dig a little bit more into how I prepare a market analysis? Yes, let's do that. Because I'm pretty sure, like, especially being this new in the business, it's really easy to, like, be overwhelmed with just what the MLS has to offer. So, something I let's just, for example, pull comps for this listing I've been admit, sorry, I have to admit. Pulling some comps for this listing here. So say that they're like, I want to sell my house. I'm going to pull some comps. Okay. So let me just clear the criteria. So what I like to do is I go to the map, I click on jump to property, and I copy and paste the address on the listing or the subject property, and then it will jump to it. And then I pull out, and this, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, but this pocket of Lehigh is there's a variety of older homes and newer homes, and you get into different price ranges when you're over a creek or like main roads like this. So if I want, a smaller scope of the area, I like to pull a small scope and then a broader scope. So what I'm going to do is I went to this poly polygon. There it is. Polygon tool that you can use, and I will just pull it just kind of like, and it doesn't need to be perfect. I'm obviously a perfectionist, as you can see, but I just kind of do things just past this creek because I like to treat creeks like a main road. Again, just this is giving me like different information. And then you go to status and you do sold. I like to only base it off of solds, really, when I'm speaking to the seller, just because that's what appraisers pull from as well. They only do just solds. And then this is a two-story home. And then again, like when you're pulling these comps, you can go to, where is that? You can go, not that one. All right, back go. You can go to the tax data of that property where it tells you all the property data. So where was that one? Let me just pull. So like you really using the tax data as a tool is going to be super helpful. And then obviously your seller would give you like more information as far as how much square feet is it and stuff like that. So it looks like it's a 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath. So I don't really try to my search criteria, I don't really make it so narrow, just because I do want a broader scope of, the market. It's still so these matches, it's still giving me 205, so right now, I just kind of am gonna limit it a little bit more. I'm gonna do a two-story home. How much square feet is it? Um, Square footage, okay. It looks like so it's about 2,000 square feet. So I'll limit it to square footage. I'll kind of go like 2,500 square feet. That gives me two. So maybe I'll broaden it a little bit more because you kind of want more than two comps. That gives you 51. So that's honestly, that's fine. And then you go number of days back. In this market, I sometimes do 60 to 90 days back. That's more of like a nice, like even match result. So then I go to here and then I personally like to go to this grid view and then you can see like, okay, this is a 4 bed, 4 bath and just kind of comparing these homes and this one is a little bit bigger. It's got 4 bed, 3 bath. This one sold for 564. This one sold for 564 as well. Similar home. Just kind of like to look back at the details of them as well. So let's go to a comp that, and all of these have like the 3 bedrooms instead of the two. So I think again, with the tax data search too, it may not be as accurate. So that's why it's important to go to your seller and say, hey, did you finish your basement? Any extra bedrooms that you added or any plumbing with the bathrooms, things like that. Um, so then you kind of just look at this and then you like to look at the history. So you can be like, okay, this was 125 days on market, initially listed at 575. And then you just take a look at the history here. So I'll go back just for clarity purposes. It's right next to tax ID, and then you click on history, and then you get to see the whole listing history. And sometimes if a home has been, obviously this is a newer build, but if you are doing comps on a home, older home, you'll see like dating back like to 2000, early 2000s and stuff like that. So you see that there's like price reductions and like once they reduce this price, they went under contract, um, and things like that. So, and then it goes under contract to sold. So you get to pull these different stats. And I think it's really important to know the history and do your research. Um, I also like to bring a story to every single comp that I'm using. So like for example, this one, um, I just like call the listing agent and say, "Hey, how is this? I noticed that you guys were 131 days on market. Like, what does that mean?" Um, and they kind of just give you a story, and it's really nice to say, like, "Hey, well, they've actually like came out of the gate really high price. Their seller really wanted to price it high and they were sitting on the market, things like that. Now, granted, these are newer builds, so the days on market's going to be higher. Probably a better example would be like to go to more like older homes and not compare like super new builds. But this kind of gives, I hope this kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of how I pull comps. And sometimes I'll even open it up a little bit and even do like this whole like pocket of Lehigh. So I can even just like not limiting it to year built and saying, well, look, this one is where, let's see, view results. Saying like, where is it? So like, look, for example, like this one's active at 614 and we want to be the one that's like most competitive. So what I like to say is like we want to be a little bit lower than whatever the active listing is, pricing it competitively. If you have been a part of the quarterly market updates, the they're really saying that it's a sensitive market and it really is a sensitive market for sellers. It's like if you're not priced right ahead of the market, you'll be sitting and sitting and sitting. So That's kinda how I pull comps. Are there any questions or any other examples you'd like me or any examples that you guys are experiencing right now that you'd like me to use? No? Okay. Well, then we'll move on. I hope that was helpful. Um, so the next one is the format. So you're at the listing appointment, you prepared your comps, you prepared your net sheets, everything like that. And what I like to do personally, like what kind of gives me like a little personal touch is like I used to do this. I should probably do this more. I kind of do a little, if I have time, I leave a video saying like, "Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I'm so excited to meet you. I'm super excited to share what the numbers have to hold for you and what the market's looking like. I look forward to seeing you." And that's just like I got some raving reviews with that. So that's just kind of like a nice personal touch. I also like to shoot them a text and like almost like an hour early and say, "Hey, I'm gonna grab some coffee or soda or whatever obviously depending on what time of day it is. Like, I'm gonna grab some coffee or soda. Like, do you guys want me to pick you up? Anything?" And sometimes they say no, sometimes they say yeah, but like it's all about the gesture. Like if they say no, it's okay. It's not the end of the world, right? But it's all I kind of just like to that's kind of my way of breaking the ice. Um, and then once you get there, like build rapport immediately. Um, express appreciation for the opportunity for meeting with you and interviewing you. And I like to just set the agenda right away. Like I say, "Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, thank you so much. Oh my gosh, your house looks so cute." I like to add my own flair to it. Again, I'm not a big scripter. I've never been really big on scripting. It's really just kind of like feeling the vibe and you understand who the client is. If, again, going back to those questions, those pre-qualifying questions. So you really get to understand like what type of personality am I dealing with? Are they gonna be a little bit more warm to jokes and things like that. Obviously different age groups laugh at certain jokes. Like I like to crack jokes and stuff like that. And it's just adding your own flair to it. I mean, you're in this industry because you like people, and so just trusting your intuition with it is gonna help you so much. So setting the agenda is really important too. So once you get in there, you build rapport, you're saying, "Well, do you mind if I leave my bag at the dining table? Give me a tour, and then we'll sit down and have a chat." And then they'll just guide you to the dining table and stuff like that. They Some agents prefer that they walk through by themselves so they can really take a look through the eyes of a buyer. I personally like to go with have the seller show me around the home, especially if it's a seller that doesn't really know me that well. And it just, for me, it just kind of seems, um, if it seems more comfortable when the seller is like guiding you through the property. So, I like having them I kind of like make a joke. "Do you have anything to brag about? Like, show me all the things." Obviously, they've spoken about the unique property features that they put in. And can you show me that? Can you show me your new quartz countertops? Things like that. And they walk you through it. That's another opportunity to build rapport. And then, so you sit down after the tour, you kind of sit down at the table and then kind of like what I said in the beginning of this class for you guys is like, well, I want to open it up to what's most important to you. That's kind of how I prep for the listing appointment. Is like going through going over what's most important, right? So it's like if they really care about marketing, I'll take more time, kind of like what I said earlier. I'll take more time going through this and exactly what I do to market the home. And it's all laid out in this book right here. And address any sort of questions or concerns with that. So when I sit down, I just say like, "Do you guys have any questions? What is the most important thing to you? Any concerns that you would like us to go over before I get into it?" And if they are just like, "No, go ahead," then I just kind of do the order in which I would like to go personally. But I kind of like don't if I know they're kind of like a D personality, which is like the driver, like, okay, like get on with it. I want to know what my net sheet is. I don't take too much time. I typically just say like, well, this is all my marketing plans. I will leave this with you. So if you have any other questions, like feel free to review this at your leisure and give me a call. Kind of just leave it on the table. It's again, it's something you're giving them. I think it's really important to just constantly be giving in this business and coming from a place of just genuine care. And so just I love leaving things with my potential clients and my clients. So that's kind of the order of events that I would go initially in the listing consultation. Do you guys have any questions so far? We'll go get more into the what I dive into on the at the dinner table or something. Good to move on. Okay, let's continue. Oh, what happened? Okay, cool. So this is presenting the comps and a marketing plan. So the marketing plan's all in here. Um, Basically what I do when I'm marketing a listing is I say I have access to the multiple listing service. So once your home is inputted on the MLS, it is published on all the syndication sites. So that's realtor.com, Zillow, all of those sites, and it's across the country. We'll be able to see it, and it will be on our Keller Williams site as well. So I kind of say get into that and just say that like once like I say like Google your address and it is everywhere once we get all those agreements signed and stuff like that. So as far as digital marketing goes, that's a huge aspect that really just gets your home out there in front of the eyes of buyers. And then I go over the comps and I prepare a CMA, which is like you can generate the CMA on the Utah real estate. So on the MLS, where can I generate? Where is it? So what you can do is, and this is just for example purposes, let's just find comps that are super comparable to the home, let's say. And these are super rough. I'm just clicking it so you can see like how it's done. I feel like it's hard to like see how it's done on the MLS or learn how it's done. So what you do is you go to view reports and then you can generate a plethora of different reports. For me personally, I like to do the CMA report, which is kind of a column report, and it kind of gives you all of these, oh, where is it? Yeah, it gives you a column report and then you generate the subject properties, address, and then the number of bed and bath. And then this will auto generate a figure. So I like to have that, but I also like to do a client brief or a brief report. So what I do with that, and I'll have the brief report for active listings and under contract listings with a broader pull of the map. And I will just be like, well, this one, because this is really nice because it's like, well, this one's active. It gives you like a nice, like, okay, just cut to the chase, gives me a number. This is active. You can calculate how many days on market there are. And this is something that's printable. So this is like an example of like the notable comps that you pull that you can prepare and present to your client and say like, well, this one doesn't have a finished basement and well, I think all the ones that I clicked have an unfinished basement, but you can go by that and say, well, this is a single family home. And sometimes you can even pull different. I also like to pull like a variety of different types of homes to like, especially if it's a seller that is not very reluctant on any sort of like reluctant on working with you on price or seems like they're really strong arming you on what they want to net. I like to pull like, well, a 4,000 square foot home, although it's not a direct comp, I like to pull it and put it in this brief report. Well, your home is 3,000 square feet and a 4,000, 5,000 square foot home sold for 700 and you're wanting 700. So that's kind of something I like to use where it's like, again, cutting to the chase, super brief, like look how much square foot this is versus this one. Yours is this much square feet. So and look how much it's sat on the market. And well, obviously this is active, but like, look how much this sat on the market. And then you can even just go into history after doing all your due diligence on your end, just saying like, well, I actually spoke to this agent and they told me that they had to do massive price reductions, or I spoke to this listing agent and the listing agent that sold, and the buyer just came back with all of these concessions because the plumbing was just so off. So make sure you guys have your plumbing together, sort of things like that. Again, kind of just like coming with a story for the client is going to really help. And honestly, I would say 100% of the time, if you come in with confidence and your research and knowing your stuff, you're going to land the listing. And it's just knowing your stuff and like doing your homework. You can never, I would like to take at at minimum, I like to take like 2 days to prep for a listing appointment, because comps change all the time. There's new listings on the market every day. Even the day of, I look up the listing and look up generate new comps even before I print out a like a brief report or anything like that of anything that's new. Because if they're looking at the market and in their own neighborhood, and this is not a neighborhood that you live in, and they say, well, this one actually just hit the market and you didn't pull comps like right before the listing, and you're like, don't know, then that's kind of a damper on your credibility. So that's also another little like pro tip to help you. Oh, got to admit somebody. See, I'm so bad at admitting people. To show that you know your stuff and that you are the expert of the market. Any questions on that? Okay. So, and that kind of ties into and segues into the pricing discussion. Something I've learned, especially in these past couple years of the real estate market, is emphasizing price, and price being your number one marketing tool. There are three items that sell a house. I always say it's price, quality, condition, and marketing. So the price, quality slash condition, and marketing. So price is number one, and I put that on my recap emails. I honestly I say it till I'm blue in the face, because it doesn't matter how much updates you've done, or you can be spending millions of dollars on marketing. You could have a billboard on the freeway. If you're not priced right, it's not going to sell, or it's just going to sit and sit and sit, and you're not going to get top dollar for your home. So that's something I really emphasize. And in this market, we've had to do a lot of price reductions. And so right now, what I'm doing with my sellers is and I hate to say this, but I'm almost being a Debbie Downer, because I'm prepping them, a Debbie Downer as far as um prepping them for what's to come. Hey, you may sit. This is a really competitive market right now. And if you're not priced where our recommendation is, then you're going to miss that 14-day sweet spot window that we see whenever a listing first becomes active on a market. So I'm I'm really firm on the importance of price, because really a buyer will pay anything for the right price. And it's true with any market. It's true with like groceries and cars and things like that. And most importantly, a house. And so I think what most sellers forget, or most clients or people not in the industry, I think what they most forget is that it is a market, and we don't come up with the price. The buyer comes up with the price. And that's something that when I found experience where if I emphasize that it's a market, and that the price is not what you think it is, it's what the buyer is willing to pay for. That's how much your home's valued. And that's why we go, and then I can like back pace and say, that's why we look at what has sold. Like the sold is what has won. The active listings are what you're competing with. So kind of emphasizing that. And then below is like my price reduction strategy. So 14 days on the market right now is like that sweet spot. where you're getting people kind of like almost like the honeymoon phase, sweet spot honeymoon phase of a home being on the market. And so I like to cut that in half where I say like within 7 days on the market, if we have 10 showings but no offers, we have to have a price reduction conversation. So if your seller is willing to, have that discussion, that's awesome. That's a huge win. And so if there's a seller that is very insistent on having this certain price point, you can say, well, this is what I recommend. Obviously, it's your home. We can list it at whatever price you want, but just know that we have to have a pricing conversation within 7 days on market. And based on these sort of stats, like if we have 10 showings, but no 10 or more showings and no offers, then this is kind of the price reduction strategy. We revisit the comps and we talk about reducing the price just $10,000. And then same goes for having less than 10 showings and no offers. We have a price reduction conversation about comps and reducing it by $20,000. Having a plan and having a strategy and being a problem solver, and a problem like finding identifying the problem and solving the problem for the client is going to help you win the listing, and build credibility with that. Do you guys have any questions with that? Okay. So then this is where we talk about commission. So this is kind of a little commission service menu that I personally present to my clients. This is a glossy PDF print that I generate to put in the back pocket of my folder. Again, this is a whole packet that I just leave with them. And it basically says, highlights, kind of like going back to Paula's question, where it's like, if you pay a total of 5% commission, 2.5 goes to buyer broker commission, this is the service you get. Um, I've found a lot of success with this because um, it builds almost like a level or a tier. If you pay for this, this is what you get. Um, the standard package for me is really just basic things that I hold myself to a standard with my clients. So like open houses, signage, expert negotiation, CMA, syndication sites, which is obviously once you post on the MLS, it goes all into Zillow and all those sites. Electronic lockbox, showing service, which is like aligned showings or showing time that you see on the MLS. Obviously, closing gift and weekly updates. I'm just super clear with communication and always giving like a weekly recap. And then it just kind of outlines this. And if you guys want to see a little packet of that, or if you want a copy of it, I'm more than happy to share that as well. That's kind of been a really great, instead of just saying like, this is 5%. Well, why? Or like this, I charge 7% or whatever it is. Why do you charge that? Why is that? This kind of outlines value, and it has, again, it's something you're leaving with them, another form of value that you offer that you're leaving with them, for them to peruse and go over. So that's kind of like a really nice um, package that I like to provide, those packages that I like to provide a potential seller. It gives them some clear idea of like, okay, this is what I'm getting if I pay this. Because sometimes I feel like it can be very ambiguous with what you're getting. Obviously, you're offering so much value right when you step into the door because they'll already be asking you questions. You're building rapport with them. You're asking them questions, they're asking you questions, things like that. You're building that back and forth credibility. So you are already kind of showing that you have value and you're providing a market stat and the market analysis along with leaving them with something. But this is just an extra plus on um, verifying your value and showing them what you can offer them. Do you guys have any questions on that? Okay, so kind of next steps. For me personally, I really kind of get the pulse of how the appointment went. A lot of agents will ask for the listing agreement right then and there. Full disclosure, I don't really push it unless they're super, super motivated. And I will go on listing appointments, um, even if the seller is like, I think we want to sell in the next month. Like for me, that's a motivated seller. Um, so with that, I don't really push the listing agreement. And again, you can add your own flair to it, but for me, um, it really depends on their motivation. So, like, if they are moving for work and, like, their job starts in, like, a month, then we'll get that listing agreement signed, and that's not something that to really push. Um, Again, for me, it's kinda just, like, I go with my gut on whether or not to push for the listing agreement. Um, Kind of my rule of thumb is, like, if I feel a little bit uncomfortable as far as, like, pushing documents go, then I know that the client feels uncomfortable. But if they're willing to sign the listing agreement and stuff right there, like, obviously, it depends on the motivation. Like, again, if they're really, like, needing to move, we're gonna get all those documents put together, and we go over all the seller's disclosures and the MLS data input form and all of the wire fraud form and things like that. And then kind of like just talk about the commission structure and things like that, especially with the NAR, they'll have the questions with that. And then you just kind of like go through that section two of the listing agreement. And then you kind of go through the next steps. Once you get all the paperwork signed, or sometimes again, if they're not really ready to sell yet, but I locked in the listing appointment, I go into like what the next steps would be. Again, it's like really building the credibility and all the backing that you have. Like I'll schedule a photographer, we'll do staging, marketing, and timeline, but we can't really get to that until we sign this listing agreement. So that also kind of paces them to sign the listing agreement in some scenarios where it's like, I can do all this work for you. This is the next steps. Like just once you sign the listing agreement, then I can get to work. Me and my team can get to work on it. So that's kind of, again, these two items, it depends on the order on in which I present them. Like I'll probably outline next steps if I know they're not as motivated. Again, depends on situation. Do we have any questions on that? Okay. So, yeah, and then this is just kind of like I put together like some best practices and just to kind of really just sum up everything. Um, I've learned that I've learned to learn how the client wants to be communicated with. Some clients want to be communicated with every day, wanting everyday updates. Some clients are very hands off and they're just like, you do you, I trust you, just go for it. And also like some clients that need more communication, it's not necessarily like based off of like lack of trust because they signed with you. They obviously trust you to do the job that they've hired you for. A lot of it's just, wanting to know what's going on. It really just depends on personality. And for me, I'm flexible with that. I'm willing to work with what the client's needs are, um, with communication style. But whether or not they want you to be constantly communicating with them, I always send weekly updates while we're on market and things like that. And so I communicate that I will do that. And that's part of my standard package, even. So I generate like listing stats, updated listing stats, kind of like pulling a similar CMA and um, number of showings, how many showings did we have based off of the showing platform, and then just recent market activities, how the open houses went. Oh, we had 5 people come through the open house. These people, so I get really detailed with my weekly updates. This open house, we had a couple come through and they're looking to buy in this sort of time frame, or this couple is pre-qualified, or this couple was a neighbor being a looky-loo, even down to those sort of nitty-gritty details, I feel is very valuable, and I've found that sellers really appreciate it. And then always being a problem solver or constantly finding solutions. If their home is on the market, coming up with new upcoming marketing strategies. What are you going to do with the next open house? Are you going to have a raffle? How many doors are you going to knock? I knock every door before the open houses, and I reach out to my database. Like, I've had databases that have bought and sold in the area that I have another listing in. So I let them know that I'm reaching out to people that I've met at previous open houses with previous listings. And those are kind of like my personal, like, okay, what are you going to do next? Okay, what's next? Always kind of giving them, okay, what's next on the agenda? What are you going to do next? How are you going to solve this for me? Constantly, almost like it's very comforting that somebody is on your side and constantly finding new ways and still marketing. And what I found too, like, this last quote is really important. If you don't hear from me, rest assured I'm actively working behind the scenes to attract qualified buyers to your property. So sometimes, you get caught up in other clients and lead generating and, like, running your own your business. And so, but you're still actively working to sell the property, and sometimes you won't reach out to the seller for a week until, like, the weekly update. And then this is just something I say to the sellers right before they sign with me, is like, this is how I communicate, and setting that standard of, don't worry, like, you may not hear from me. That doesn't mean I forgot about you. I'm not abandoning you, sort of thing. My team and I are still working super hard on all the activities to get your property sold. We're finding different ways, and we're working on different strategies. We're getting creative with different open house ideas and stuff like that. So, if you hear from me, it's probably because I have a question for you, or it's an update. If you don't hear from me, and, like, nothing's gone wrong, just kind of future pacing that, because different personalities will think that you forgot about them. And it's like, that's something that we kind of, as agents, tend to forget about, because it's like you're so invested in the listing already that that they're not getting that communication. So, just basically, to sum it up, getting super clear communication, getting that sort of style standards set at the from the very beginning. So, yeah, I want to open the floor with any questions or any aha moments. I know it's 6:29, but just for this last minute, do we have any takeaways we'd like to share, or any questions?
I would like to thank you so much because I'm going for my first listing presentation tomorrow, and
Oh,
you've been amazing.
oh my gosh, this is such perfect timing. I'm so glad.
So thank you, thank you.
Yeah, of course. And also, if you want, when is your listing presentation?
3 p.m.
3 p.m. Okay. If you have any questions, my number is right here, and feel free to text me if you want to go over, like, any sort of, like, specific, like, that property specifically. So yeah, I'm glad those tips helped.
Thank you.
Mhm. Any other thoughts, ahas, questions?
No, but I appreciate you. Thank you.
Of course, yeah. Thank you guys for staying on. It's been fun to share kind of what I do, and honestly, it really just comes with learning your own flair to the listing appointment, and just going for it. And especially if you're new, just going in with confidence. Like, my first listing appointment, I it was very scary, because it's like you don't really know until you actually go. But I came in with such confidence because I did my research. I reached out to agents that have sold in the area, learning about the properties, and all the facts that come with the neighborhood. So it's really helpful to do your research, I guess.
All right. Thank you so much, Haley. We really appreciate you and you sharing your knowledge.
Of course, yeah. Thanks, guys.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.
There too. Okay.